Kia ora, hello, and welcome to my second video. I hope you will find this just as interesting as my first video about the ANZAC call.
This is the map of Sula and ANZAC, which we call in Turkish Arıburnu and Anafartalar, but the British called them, anglicized them and called Sula and ANZAC. Australians, New Zealanders called ANZAC, as I told you before. And after 3 months intensive fightings, nothing changed in Gallipoli. Neither Turks nor the Allies could make any breakthrough. And then Ian Hamilton wanted reinforcements to do another push in Gallipoli. So required 30,000 men from Britain, but Kitchener, Minister for War, gave him as bonus 50,000 men, not 30,000, 20,000 more. So the plan in August was to support ANZAC by 20,000 people land here in ANZAC area, but still they had the extra troops, nearly 30,000 men, so they didn't know what to do. And then they decided to land the rest of the army in Sula. So then it was planned as two-pronged operation. British army planned to land in Sula to outflank Turkish army heading towards Teketepe and Kavaktepe this way from the beaches, from Sula Bay. And while ANZAC's breaking out this way, heading the summits of 3 hills, Hill Q, Hill 971 and Chunuk Bair. And nearly 50,000 people took part in this operation. And Turkish headquarters, meanwhile, knew eligible to carry out another push in Gallipoli because intelligence reported that there were so many troop ships, transports going through Gibraltar from Britain to Mediterranean Sea. So Turkish headquarters started a discussion of what they could do. And we didn't expect any advance from KPLS from south because it was tried again and again, nearly 6 times and didn't work and ended up in a failure. So then Turkish attention was concentrated on ANZAC. Mustafa Kemal, who was 19th Division commander, expected a breakout from north of ANZAC towards Sula direction and heading Sarıbayır mountain range and the mountain tops. But Esat Pasha, who was a corps commander in ANZAC, 3rd Army Corps, and actually he was his teacher before in military academy, expected a breakout from Long Pine this way towards Kilitbay Plateau on the Turkish left. And Mustafa Kemal was right in his judgment, and he thought they would break out that way. But Esat Pasha couldn't be, couldn't agree on this, plan. So cynically, nearly 20,000 men landed in ANZAC, and then they started this operation, which we call August operation. It was two-pronged in Sula and in ANZAC area to make a big, advance. Nearly 40,000 ANZAC and nearly 25,000 in Sula. So altogether 50,000 troops arrived, took part in this operation. So it was very hot 4 days in Gallipoli. August offensive was initiated by Australian attack at Long Pine. Long Pine was named after a pine tree standing out beside Turkish trenches. Somewhere here is Long Pine. Actually, it was diversion to pull Turkish army this way and then strike from the other direction. So considered as a diversion or feint attack. And when bombardment started on this side, because a few days it was being slowly bombarded by New Zealand artillery from Russell's top and then from the ships. So then Esat Pasha thought they would break out this way. But actually it was just diversion and to confuse Turkish headquarters. So the area was roughly targeted by Australians, 250 meters length of Turkish trench, distance between trenches nearly 80 yards, and they dug 5 tunnels under no man's land. And Turkish trenches there were covered, there were roofs on top. That's why subjected to heavy bombardment. And nearly 16,000 shells from Navy and artillery, especially New Zealand howitzers, firing from Russell's top were very effective on Turkish trenches. About 1,000 Turks in the trenches, nearly buried alive in the heavy bombardment. And watches were synchronized to 5:30 when at the right time. Australian infantry just ran through the galleries underneath, and then emerged from out of the tunnels and jumped into Turkish line. And Turks had no time to bring reinforcements, so in this way Turkish trenches were lost to Australians. And then all Turkish reinforcements behind from 3rd Army headquarters directed to Long Pine, and nearly 4 days, nearly 3 days and 4 nights, nearly 4 days, very bloody fighting took place. And both sides in 3-day battle lost nearly 10,000 people. Australians were awarded 7 Victoria Crosses over there. And it's the place in ANZAC actually where most Victoria Crosses won by Australians in the campaign. And 3 Australian battalion commanders and 2 Turkish regimental commanders died in the fierce fighting. And every year when it is ANZAC Day, first service is held, on the beach on commemorative site, and then second service is held at Long Pine, and then at Turkish 57th Regiment here in the middle, and then Chunuk Bair later in the afternoon. So this is the way on ANZAC Day services are held. On the previous day, on the 24th of May, services were held at Turkish monument in Cape Palace, and then French people gather there, and the British one is held at British Cape Palace Memorial. So this way it is organized. So this was the diversion to pull, and then after this attack, New Zealanders, the mounted brigade, started marching from north of ANZAC this way, like 3 brigades spreading this way, targeting New Zealand objective, just Chunuk Bair here, and then Hill Q by Indians, and then Australian Brigade, 4th Brigade under Monash, targeting Hill 971 somewhere here. So big spread in 3 columns. There were 3 others backing this operation. Meanwhile, British started landing on both points in Sula, 1st 11th Division here, and the Irish Division followed. So big sweeping operation, nearly 20,000 in ANZAC and 20,000 in Sula took part in operation, big sweeping operation planned on the very night 6-7, and then continued on the following days, nearly 4 days, very bloody fighting. So after Lone Pine attack and breakout by 3 brigades and then 3 to follow, and 6-7 the night was very busy night, in other words, and Turkish army meanwhile defending Sula, but it was not very strongly held. German General Sanders, who thought Sula was strategic but didn't put a lot of Turkish troops to defend it, so only 2 gendarme battalions from Turkish army, about 2,000 men deployed over there, so lightly held by Turkish army, so it was very critical for us. But the British army under Stopford, who landed there, didn't advance in time to the heights, so nearly 2 days build up went on the beaches on both points. They just crossed Salt Lake and then pushed as far as W Hills, but no further. Meanwhile, a Turkish army corps from north covered nearly 60 kilometers in 24 hours and got to Sula. Then on the following day, they counterattack on British army in Sula in the battlefields. And when it was very critical for us because we lost Lone Pine to Australians. Australians advanced about 200 meters. Though the attack at the neck by Light Horse failed, and the film Gallipoli was based on this charge right here in the middle, and Light Horse lost nearly 600 men in that charge. And then there were 2 other operations, like divergence along ANZAC line, nearly 4 attacks to keep Turkish army deployed on this side, not to allow them to go to north, and then support Turks fighting on Sarıbayır and then in Sula. So operations continued here while others continued over there in Sula and north of ANZAC as well. On the 7th of August, New Zealand mounted rifles first advanced as far as Tabletop, and then infantry followed, but they couldn't advance to the top of Chunuk Bair because of Turkish fire, because Turkish 8th Division was over there, and also 2 regiments got there in time. It was a very critical situation. And on the following day, then Wellington made another push and then got to the top of the hill. And then nearly 36 hours, nearly 2 days and 2 nights fighting went on. And then it was very critical because Sula was critical and ANZAC critical. At that critical stage, Mustafa Kemal was appointed to command Turkish army in Sula and in the area known as Sarıbayır or Chunuk Bair. So Chunuk Bair and Sula were combined and became a joint front. Mustafa Kemal then he was 19th Division commander, but then he became a corps commander, and he went to Sula immediately, spent the night in the headquarters. 8th and 9th Turkish army counterattacked, 2 Turkish divisions, 7th and 12th attack on British, so then checked British in Sula, so Sula crisis was over. Then Mustafa Kemal returned to ANZAC, and still New Zealanders, Wellington, and the British and others, Indians, fighting over there, trying to keep the heights here. And so he spent the night at Chunuk Bair right here, here in the middle, right here, and on the following day put nearly 5 battalions along this line. This is trench map. Actually, red ones show British and blue ones, Turkish lines. So then on the following day, about 4:30, Turkish army here counterattack. Meanwhile, New Zealanders were not there because Wellington lost very heavily, and even commanding officer was killed, Lieutenant Colonel Malone, by friendly fire. So replaced by British Wiltshire and Lancashire, battalions when Turks counterattack, where only Victoria Cross of New Zealand was, taken by Cyril Bassett. So Turks counterattack and pushed British troops, from the summit of Chunuk Bair, And again, Turks, after 4 days intensive fightings, they could control in Tula, in ANZAC, and then crisis was over. After August offensive failed, which lasted nearly 4 days, and it was terrible loss on both sides, Allies used nearly 50,000 people, 30,000 of them lost in 4-day battles. And then Ian Hamilton wanted reinforcements from Britain, but enough was enough, so didn't get more reinforcements. And meanwhile, the other thing that happened was Australian journalist visit to Gallipoli. Rupert Murdoch's father, Kate Murdoch, carrying a letter from Australian Prime Minister, came to Gallipoli, got permission from Ian Hamilton on the island of Imros, now we call it Gökçeada, and then visited ANZAC. And then when he visited ANZAC, he learned about recent fightings, August offensive, which failed, and the men complained they were being wasted in the hands of incapable generals. So many things were wrong and problems, etc. So then, learning all these facts, went to the island and told British war correspondent Ashton Bartelt to do something because people at home didn't know what was going on here in Gallipoli. So Ashton Bartelt wrote a letter and addressed British Prime Minister, and he would take it, but in Marseille on the way, while going to Britain, military police intercepted and they got a letter from him. But he was a very determined man, and he had good connection in Britain, talked to cabinet members and also Prime Minister. And then politicians learned what was going on, so pressure increased on Lord Kitchener and then Ian Hamilton. So Kitchener had to sacrifice his friend in Gallipoli. He was relieved. Then Monroe replaced him, coming from France, and then took the command and visited Gallipoli in November in 3 days, and then decided to pull out. He said, we just did the bridgehead, nothing else, just Turks on high ground, so this doesn't work. And the other thing meanwhile happened in the Balkans. Bulgaria joined the war on our side, so soon there would be link up between Germany and Turkey. And Monroe thought if Turks got a proper artillery from Austro-Hungarian Empire and then Germany, if Turks were able to do like ANZAC, like 800 acres of land, like 3-day sustained bombardment, nobody could be safe in this. Some said they could stand, others worried about this. So then Monroe sent a report considering evacuation, which shocked everybody in Britain. Then he was replaced as well, relieved. And then Monroe, after Monroe, Birdwood, command ANZAC, took the command, replacing him. And nobody was saying anything, all quiet. Then Lord Kitchener came to the final decision, the most powerful man in Britain, so visited Gallipoli, and then decided to pull out. So it was carried out in 2 stages. First, Sula and ANZAC were evacuated, 50,000 in Sula and 40,000 in ANZAC. In 12 nights, evacuated group by group. Final nights left only 10,000 in Sula and 10,000 in ANZAC, and they were evacuated on the final night in 3 stages, 3,000 each group. So when it was December 20, almost nobody remained. Nearly 90,000 men without any loss evacuated. It was planned by Bruder White, Australian staff officer, and whether it was considered as a success, maybe Turks saw or found it out or not, discussed still. But most Turkish reliable sources say Allies planned it very well and very good covered operations, and all the tricks worked. So one morning we found out they had gone, and all the beaches were, not occupied by Allies anymore. And after 2 battlefields were evacuated, and then 2 weeks later, British evacuated from Cape Helles as well, and 30,000 men who were there, British, already. French already left because they went to Balkans, because Bulgaria, after joining the war, French wanted to help Serbs fighting in the Balkans. So 2 French divisions already left Gallipoli, went to Thessaloniki to fight. So British couldn't afford 2 battlefields in the Middle East, in the Balkans, so in Thessaloniki, in Gallipoli, so had to follow French because political problems, as well would start between 2. So Gallipoli in this way concluded after 8.5 months, nearly 4.5 months in Sula, 8 months in ANZAC, and total, 8.5 months or 9 months, including naval operations, 11 months, 1 million men involved and 500,000 casualties on both sides, and it was terrible loss. And this is the way Gallipoli ended, but not the war, and continued in other places.
Thank you for watching. Please look out for my future productions and don't forget to follow me on the social media.